Hi everyone, this is Kevin from Supernatural Selection. Are you an independent creator? Do you have a webcomic or an Etsy store? Do you 3D print things? Or are you just looking to get some word out for your Discordian cabal with social terrorism? Well, we'd love to help. And David, I believe you've got some details about how we can help.
Why, certainly. If you go to supernaturalselectionpod.com/contact, that is supernaturalselectionpod.com/contact, you can learn how to advertise with us.
That's right. I believe the rate is $2 per episode. You can't beat that with a stick.
I mean, trust me, we've tried.
Yeah, that's cheap. That's literally cheaper than dirt.
And best of all, if you're not sure how to write an ad, we'll do it for you. We'll even record it.
Absolutely. Just let us know what you need in the ad, and we'll be happy to do that for you.
And again, that URL is supernaturalselectionpod.com/contact.
And now, back to the show. God damn you. Don't ever do that again. Oh, Christ. This is going to be a weird one.
Yeah.
Yep.
I burnt my hand.
Did you? On
Yeah.
what, the toaster oven?
Yep.
Oh, that sucks.
Back on my knuckle.
Ooh, yeah, no, been there. Been there several times, actually. That toaster oven's a death trap. So, hello and welcome to Supernatural Selection. I'm your host, Kevin. With me this week is Mike the Skeptic. Mike, how are you?
Skeptically present.
You don't believe you're present?
Undecided.
Okay. Well, David's not with us this week. He is unfortunately ill.
Thought you were going to say David's not with us anymore.
He's dead. No, he probably feels dead right now.
Probably.
He's sick, which seems to be going around. I was sick last weekend and thought I was going to die, and now I'm a little bit of, this voice thing. I normally sound better. But that's okay. We're going to go ahead and do an episode, and it's not a Week in Weird. But before we do that, want to once again say head over to our website, supernatpod.rocks. You can find a link to our Patreon and our Discord. I would highly recommend joining the Discord, joining our fun community. We're sharing memes, we're telling jokes, we're being smartasses. It's a lot of fun. And every now and again, Mike remembers he's on there and posts.
Yes, very, very infrequently, but
Yes, quite. But today, Mike,
yeah.
like I said, we're not doing a weekend weird with David not here. We're gonna actually go ahead and do. This is gonna feel like an old one from 4 years ago. Yeah, we've been doing it that long. Today, Mike, we're gonna talk about giants and the conspiracy of giants.
Like the baseball team.
You wish. Let me ask you, have you got a drink?
Yes.
Good. This is gonna get. You're gonna want one. So
I'm gonna need the buffer.
yeah, you're gonna need some podcasting juice there. So to start off with, we need to address the fact that most people know giants, from the biblical sense. I don't mean that like the knowing in the biblical sense. I mean the giants. The whole. I believe it was Genesis, the whole, there were giants in the earth in those days. They said they were the products of the sons of God and the daughters of man and a union. And then there were these giants. They were the Nephilim, which they were the men of renown and the heroes of old. You familiar with all that?
I mean, some of it, not all of it.
Yeah, well, the thing is, the Bible never says what size they are, and also the entire idea of giant may be a mistranslation. We're not sure.
I mean, there's plenty of those.
Oh,
in
yeah.
there. But yeah, because like giant is like, when I go league bowling, there's a guy there that has to be like 7 foot, and he feels like a giant to me. So
Oh, yeah, I can imagine.
we're not talking about like, don't necessarily are talking about 20-foot tall.
Yeah,
things all the time.
exactly. Like David and Goliath.
Yeah.
Goliath was one of those giants, and they existed up to the flood and apparently after the flood, which I don't know how that works.
Well, they had the giant staterooms on the ark, right?
I just picture Andre the Giant in a room on the ark.
Another giant.
Yep. And it's interesting because, okay, that's the Christian religion. By the way, I'm working from like a double-sided page of notes this week. I did not have a chance to write a script due to the illness, so you're getting what you're getting this week. Mike, have you noticed that most cultures have a story of giants? I know you don't do a lot of history reading, but like it's one of those things that it seems like every culture has a giant.
Well, that's because, humans have come in a range of sizes, and
Sure.
there always have been people that are born and grow taller than normal. So
Yeah.
it makes sense that there would be, myths around that.
Yes, that is true. God, what's his name? I think Fingal, the Irish giant. Jim used to do a song about that at Finian's. The giant will rise with the moon.
Nope.
Was
don't
one of
remember
his
that one.
songs. Okay, well, it was basically a song about a giant that would rise up and defend Ireland in its time of direst need.
Yeah. Oh, and dang, I can't remember. Well, Paul Bunyan
Yes, okay,
And,
that's more of a folk tale, but yes.
and the guy that raced the train or the
That he wasn't a giant.
Wasn't a
That was
giant?
just John Henry.
John
John Henry
Henry.
was just a
100%.
real good steel driving man.
oh okay.
Yeah. Good, really good blues song by Mississippi John Hurt about the hammer that killed John Henry called Spike Driver Blues. Anyway, that's not related. So anyway, you've got the giants in all these cultures, which it's interesting. And like you said, gigantism is a thing.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's a people on the planet that hasn't experienced gigantism.
Yeah. And dwarfism.
Indeed, that too. And we're not going to go into dwarves. We're going to have to actually do like a whole episode about the wee folk at some point, like a real deep dive onto that. But for the time being, the giants, it's interesting because a lot of people point at that as proof that there was a race of giants. Kind of like the various flood myths.
Yes.
Yeah, that they're like, well, that's proof. And I'm like, well, actually, the problem is I actually kind of put stock in that there was some kind of a flood that we're all there as a culture we're all remembering.
Yeah. There's there wasn't a worldwide flood.
Oh, I'm not saying it's a worldwide flood, but I'm talking about water levels rising from like the melting of the ice, the glaciers.
I don't think the geological evidence shows that. But, flooding is one of those things that happens everywhere. There's, rivers and water and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It happens infrequently enough that, myths and legends come up around it. So, it's just like the giant thing. It's one of those things that happens infrequently enough that people create stories around it.
Sure.
But not...
Yeah.
isn't a everyday occurrence.
Well, this gets a little bit into Graham Hancock, which he is a kook, but there are certain things he espouses that I also find fascinating and, would be okay believing sometimes. It's neither here nor there. The point is, cultures believe there were giants, and modern day conspiracy people, and, in general, religious people believe, well, there's your proof that there was a race of giants. Now, that's fine. That's history. That's the past. Where we start having a problem is like today. Mike, you remember we covered on Weekend Weird the story of that guy that took a video on TikTok of what looked like a giant on the ridge of a mountain, and then this guy turned up dead?
Yes.
And the conspiracy theorist said, see, this is him trying to keep us from knowing about the giants. But, and we talked about that. It's like, I think atmospheric lensing was the best we could figure out because it's not a giant.
Yeah, I mean...
That's a given. I mean, I've seen some weird shit like that before at a distance.
It's like, why would a giant be dancing right at the perfect, like, precipice of this,
Right on the edge, on the horizon of the mountain. Yeah. It's probably lensing of someone walking on the other side of the mountain.
Or just near the top.
Yeah, something like that. But besides that, there's like... Have I told you about the giant of Kandahar?
I think so.
We're going to talk about the giant of Kandahar for a second for the listeners. In 1992, during Operation Enduring Freedom...
Yes. The most patriotic of missions.
Yeah, that's one of them Bush Jr. Was that Bush Sr. in 92, or was that Bill Clinton in 92? I don't remember.
92.
Who was the president at that point? Who got us into Afghanistan? That's the question at that point.
That was George H.W.
Oh, Sr.?
Yes, Sr.
Okay, so George Sr. got us in there. So 1992, this I think they said was in, they just said a military group from an undisclosed branch of the military went missing in Kandahar province in Afghanistan. So they send in, I think it was the, one of these black ops groups,
Yeah.
To go
special forces.
Special forces to go in and try to find this this army or this military group. And they find their gear all scattered about in front of a cave, and they're like, something's in there. So they send one of the guys up, and they hear something inside the cave, and this giant ass spear just stabs the first guy going in, and out comes a, like, I think they said it was a 15-foot tall red-headed white guy dressed in like caveman clothes. I guess he's screaming unga bunga at them. And he starts attacking him, and the special forces guys open fire on him for 30 seconds, I think, with really high powered machine guns and everything. And it takes like a full 30 seconds of fire to drop this thing. And then, a helicopter, a Black Hawk comes down, takes the giant, and no one ever sees it again. And there's, one dude that says this is true. And everybody is just latched on. There's probably been another couple people that have, corroborated his story.
Mm-hmm.
For money, I'm guessing. I don't know. But there's no record of anything even remotely like this, which people, of course, are going to say that's because of the cover-up. And it's an example of reports of modern giants, which are semi-frequent as far as, in the lore goes. It's not as common as Bigfoot, but you find them sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, modern giants really start... Particularly, the big thing is not even so much worldwide. That's a kind of a semi-rare thing, except in Afghanistan. There's stories about that. There's giant stories, but the most of them, the biggest giant place is here in the United States, Mike.
Yeah.
And it started pretty much when we got here, when white people showed up.
When white met bread. No, wait, that's when
the
met the Saxons.
Yeah, no. That's the Norman invasion of England. That is completely different. So here's the deal with giants. On this show, we talk a lot about bookstore racism.
Yeah.
Now, bookstore racism, for those that maybe listening for the first time, maybe don't remember, is the idea of basically it's not out and out racism. It's more of a intellectual. Other cultures aren't capable of this. It had to be white people,
Yeah.
which we take a real hard line against here at Supernat. We're not big fans of it. You know,
No,
it's
yeah.
it's like the Dogon tribe. You know, yeah, okay, great. They've got some really interesting stuff with the Dogon tribe, but people don't believe they could have gained, you know, knowledge of astronomy. It's like, why? They're brown? Is that it? What you trying to say?
Yeah.
So we get here as a people, you know, us white folks, and one of the big things that people start discovering as we start settling these lands, and by settling I mean stealing,
Oh, yeah.
are Native American mounds. There's a lot of them, Mike.
Yes.
Like, we live in Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of mounds in Mississippi.
Yes.
And, like, some of them are on private property, but, like, there's the holy mound of the Choctaw and Chickasaw is in Mississippi. Nanawaya is in Mississippi. It is where the first Choctaw and Chickasaw came into the world in their belief system, is at Nanawaya. There's the Emerald Mound down in Natchez. You know, we went there, got some great photos. And then there's like the Mangum Mound, which is on the old Mangum farm. There's tons of them, just tons of mounds all over the place. And that goes for the eastern seaboard. You know, this side of the Mississippi, at least, is full of Native American mounds. And they started digging into them because, of course, we did.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and this,
Have you ever seen a hill, Kevin, and thought to yourself, man, I want to dig into that?
only if it's Native American. You know, only if it's like sacred to another culture.
Man sees a hill, he just wants to dig in it.
Yeah,
There might be like gold or,
that was the thinking, actually.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, like Joseph Smith, founder of Mormonism, that was like one of the things members of his family used to do. They were treasure hunters, and they would dig in Native American mounds.
Did Native Americans actually have any gold when white people showed up? Like, I understand, like they did in South America, but I don't think North America had much.
They had a little, and they had some from trade.
Yeah, I thought they got most of that stuff from trade.
No, they were at like bronze,
Yeah.
I think, at that point, and some copper. But
I mean, maybe some around the Colorado River area, where there was actually, gold to be had in rivers.
And here's the other thing that you have to understand is that there may have been gold here on this side because the Native Americans had a extensive trading network all the way down to South America.
Yeah.
That is not impossible.
I mean, yeah, but it's not like a lot of it.
No,
like,
I mean,
not
it's
enough to, where every place you'd want to dig would just have gold in it.
You're not going to find Tutankhamun's tomb type situations here. Exactly. But the big thing is, they wanted to dig in these things and see what was in there, and they would find skeletons because that's one of the places they would bury their dead. So it's kind of grave robbing, which, I don't know, this whole period kind of makes me think of like dynamite archaeology.
Yeah.
Which is going to come up at some point during this discussion, I'm sure. All right, so we got here, like I said, and we're digging in the mounds and we're finding skeletons. And one of the things that keeps getting reported later, I need to bring this up, there were theories about who built the mounds. And this is where the bookstore racism comes in. for some reason, we got here and just decided, ain't no way these brown people did this.
Yeah. No, because, like you told me before, I thought you were going to say it.
Oh.
Brown people can't pile dirt.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. Brown people can't pile dirt.
That's what they thought. That's not what we think.
That's their thought. That's their thinking, which is like even more offensive than the pyramids to me. Like, okay, sure, I could see finding the pyramids being like, this must have been aliens. I could see that.
Or a very advanced society.
Yeah, something like that. But like here, it's like the audacity to see a people and go, you can't pile dirt.
Wait till we tell them about that, like, city they had.
Which one?
The big one they had, like, on the kind of the man-made plateau, dirt plateau.
Oh, you're talking about Poverty Point?
I think. I don't know.
The one in Louisiana?
It was like an ancient Native American, like, basically city.
Yeah, that was Poverty Point.
I think it was before Europeans came over.
Oh, yeah. It was it's like pre-Columbian, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, of course, we got here. Couldn't be the brown people. So this theory developed that there was an advanced civilization here before the Native Americans. And, of course, this civilization was white folks.
Oh, well, why wouldn't it be? We're just so awesome.
Oh, yeah. Our complete inability to play basketball. We're just awesome. So they come up with this theory, and, of course, then they start thinking it's giants, because look at the size of the mounds. And there are some instances of people digging into the mounds and finding large skeletons. And by large, I mean the most realistic height I've seen, 6.5 feet, 7 at the outset. At the outside. Now, the problem with this is yellow journalism comes into play. And we need to talk about journalism prior to the early to mid 1900s.
Yeah.
Do you know what yellow journalism is?
I mean, I have a vague idea, but I couldn't tell you a definition of it.
It's tabloid writing.
Okay.
Yeah. It's basically, Weekly World News.
Yeah.
So you've got these newspapers, and here's the thing: there's nothing else to entertain people. There's no movies, there's no television. We're talking about like the 1800s.
Yeah.
And there is nothing to entertain anyone except like opium, staring at the wall, and masturbating. That is like the 3 things you can do.
Well, I mean, if you're gonna,
and beating someone,
find entertainment like at home or just somewhere, it's going to be reading something, right?
Yeah,
it's going to be either a newspaper or a book.
And you can't even afford like a phonograph, most likely.
Yeah,
you can't even put
you're going to listen to music. You're going to go to
the saloon.
Yeah, somewhere that has like a piano player, or maybe they have a small
got to head to the public house
or something. Yeah,
and then
someone playing. At the local forum or, church or something like that.
And then you get there, and it's some dude up there on a honky-tonk piano going, "Hey, Mr. Shitty Biscuit," and you're just like, great.
God, I can't even it is wild to think about, with how, well, also there's another way I'll talk about in a second, but how much music is to us nowadays. You can just listen to it whenever you want. You're in the car, you can listen to music. You got your headphones and your smartphone.
You can be surrounded by music 24 hours a day if you wanted to be.
But here's also another thing, like from watching some, YouTube stuff that from musicians, people were a lot more musical back then themselves. Like usually someone in your family that you lived with played an instrument.
Or you'd sing all the time.
Or you'd sing, but also, people would have like either a guitar, or even before guitars were that common, they'd have, a fiddle or, some instrument that was handed down.
A mouth harp, something.
Yeah, harmonica.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of different instruments, and people just, they didn't have a whole lot of other time to do stuff. They didn't have TV to distract them, so they learned to play an instrument.
Yeah, and like, okay, like you remember the Patrick Stewart version of A Christmas Carol?
Yeah.
There's that scene where Scrooge shows up at the Cratchit house with the ghost, and like they're all standing around, and they start like the mom starts singing, and the whole family singing along, and I'm sitting here going, "The fuck is wrong with you people?" And I remember, oh wait, there was literally nothing else to do to entertain yourself.
Yeah.
Except sit there and sing about giving the cops shit.
And you have to think about, too, the fact that, there's all these people or, there's probably, 1,000% more what you consider musicians than there are nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
The fact that the ones that we remember had to be, even that much better.
Yeah.
A wild thought I just had.
No, that's a great point to bring up because
think about how many like Beethovens probably go, unnoticed because they just never got into music.
Yep. And you bring that up, and I'm glad you do because it's a great example of how fucking bored they were to the point that someone had to come up with entertainment, and that's where newspapers come in.
Yes.
Newspapers in our lifetime, like the last several generations, have been a source for news.
Yes,
they are newspapers. Yes. There's a certain level of, quote, journalistic integrity that has been expected from newspapers for, I'm going to say, give me a sec, 70, like 110 years.
Yeah, I was going to say, in the grand scheme of things, not that long.
Not that long, but like for the past, say, century, news went into the newspaper, not counting comic strips and TV listings, but the thing is, it wasn't always like that.
I mean, there was news, but
yes,
it wasn't
there was
the
news,
only.
but you would put interesting and entertaining stories in your newspaper for people.
Because when you went to the newsstand, there wasn't just one local paper to compete with those. There was several different, Herald, such and such Herald and Times and
the Gazetteer, the Picayune and all that. Yeah, no, exactly. So competing newspapers, they're trying to one up each other with stories, and news, especially at that point, didn't always happen. They were not living in a 24-hour news cycle like we are.
And their source of news is very much smaller because lack of communication. Sure, they may get news of national things.
Right.
But if some awesome, amazing thing happened a state over, they probably would never hear about it.
Or it'd be weeks.
Weeks.
Yeah, and the way that would turn up is a lot of newspapers would buy newspapers from outside of the city and copy the articles.
Makes sense.
Or buy the articles off of an out-of-state newspaper.
Sure, and I can see
and that's also
people selling stories around.
And that's also where like Reuters came from.
Mm-hmm.
You would sign up for your wire services to get out-of-state articles.
Yeah, once Telegraph became a thing.
Exactly. So the point is that left a lot of room in your newspaper that you had to fill. So you would get people writing stories that just weren't true for entertainment.
Would sometimes they be labeled as fiction? Like they'd,
Yeah, no, there would be fiction in there. There would, and there'd be think pieces. You'd get a lot of people writing into the newspaper with opinions. Yeah. But the big thing we're talking about here is like a great example is in the late 1800s when out of New York a lot of stories would come about like Edmund Halley's grandson using a new revolutionary telescope to see short furry Batmen on the moon, and that they had
awesome. Did we find them when we went to the moon?
No, we found the naked green guys. Remember, Mike?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
What about Megatron? We found him too, right?
No, we found Shockwave.
Oh, okay. Couldn't remember who we found.
But no, they they'd say like, and then there was a higher form on Mars that looked just like angels. I'm like, you're not seeing a goddamn thing on Mars. But, those sorts of articles would make the rounds. And it was ridiculous and be sensationalist, but you would get other articles where, let's say, there's a local Native American mound. I'm trying real hard not to say Indian.
Yes.
Because that's a bad thing to say now. But, they would report on findings in these mounds and then talk about how big the skeletons were, Mike.
Yes.
And they would always say they were between like 6 feet, which when they say 6 feet being a giant, I was like, God, I keep forgetting how short white people were back then.
Yeah.
But like 6 foot giant skeleton discovered. The jaw could fit over your head, but like up to 9 feet.
Which, is not unheard of in humans.
But, they would keep finding these things.
Oh, yeah,
and they would keep reporting it. And it's like, it would always be like, a farmer plowing in his field uncovers a field of 3,000 Native American skeletons, with many of them being 9 feet tall. And I'm like, what you're asking me to believe is that every square foot of land I have ever stepped on in my life in the state of Mississippi is just nothing but giant skeletons.
I mean, you didn't know that?
No. I've been here my whole life. Did y'all know this in Louisiana? What the fuck?
No. So here I'm have to wonder, okay, so how do they get these verified? They didn't.
Yeah.
They had their neighbor come over who totally knows things about skeletons. And, that looks like leg bone of someone that's like 12 feet tall.
Right. And here's the other thing, is part of the problem is that, like, when a skeleton falls apart in the ground, it spreads out.
Yeah. It's
going to look bigger.
Yeah, I mean, that's if you, unearth it and not disturb the bones.
Right. And this
which takes a lot of care, which I'm assuming these people didn't do.
Typically, no. Look here, I found us a femur. But like I said, they'd spread out, and then like also sometimes they'd find like a mammoth bone.
Yeah.
And it's like, that is a giant's leg. Okay, yeah.
Or, maybe some, other large animal, that died nearby, say a deer or something like that.
Who knows? But, like, all of the articles I read are very formulaic, which leads me to believe they're sourced from, like, one article that was interesting. You remember I was talking about how they, buy a newspaper and copy the articles?
Yeah.
And it would, be a game of telephone?
Yes.
So they all sound really similar. Farmer digs up mound in his field, finds a bunch of skeletons. Skeleton of giant discovered, 6 to 9 feet tall. And they would always, say, these are the skeletons of the mound builders, which is the race that predates the Native Americans.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh. But, 10,000 years, which actually they're saying we've been here a long goddamn time.
Yeah.
They're starting to say, the earliest I've seen, and it may have changed, but, when I looked it up recently, they said something like 26,000 BC.
Yeah.
For the earliest man in North America.
Mm-hmm.
So, 10,000, that could work. But the big thing is, they're saying it's the mound builders that predated the Native Americans. And there is talk about, finding Clovis points.
Yeah.
You familiar with Clovis points?
Sort of. I mean, I've heard the term, but I can't recall off the top of my head what it is.
Okay, so the Clovis people were, one of the earliest peoples discovered in the United States, and they were, of course, discovered near Clovis, which I think that's Arizona or New Mexico. And they had You can tell where they were because their culture had a very specific tool they would make called Clovis points that could be used for tool ends or just cutting or various other things. It's a very specific form of rock chipping, like
like flint knapping.
Yeah, sort of thing. So Clovis points, very, very specific type of point. And you would find these in the mounds sometimes. So you can see how it might be.
Yeah.
This is the mound builders. So these skeletons, and sometimes, and this is weird, and I kind of believe this because there have been talk of this, they would find some of these skeletons buried in a seated position.
Yeah.
Which I find that kind of interesting. Like, they would be in a seated position facing west. And part of the reason I find that interesting is because a lot of the cultures here talk about having migrated to their homes on the eastern side of the United States from somewhere west due to a disaster.
Yeah.
I find that interesting. And then you find guys in the mounds buried facing west in a seated position. I'm not drawing any conclusions. I just think it's fascinating. So anyway, these news articles with giants, they all read the same. And there's one other thing that's in them.
Mm-hmm.
Smithsonian Institution gathering the remains to take back to the museum of these giants.
Of course.
Because, and the reason for that, it's obviously, what sounds more legit than the Smithsonian coming to look at it?
Well, that sounds pretty legit, I guess.
Sure. If you're telling a bullshit story, it's like, and my uncle is John Nintendo. He owns Nintendo. It's that kind of, you're just scrounging for clout at that point. Another thing that's interesting about these old articles is the number of times they end with, and the bones turn to dust when removed from the ground.
Well, got to cover your tracks.
Here's the thing, Mike, and I was going to ask you about this.
Yeah.
The bones do that?
Bones are, notoriously well or long-lived. They stick around for quite a while.
We found that cloth-wrapped leg bone on Monkey's Land that time.
Yeah.
And that was real goddamn old.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, a lot of them said they would, disintegrate.
Very convenient.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of times they would be like covered in bronze, surrounded by arrowheads, stuff like that. And it would always be like, this is highly advanced, way more advanced than these Native Americans.
Of course.
Let's talk about some of the physical characteristics of these giants they were discovering. And first off, somehow they knew they were redheaded.
Well,
I'm guessing they would find one with some hair on it. I don't know. But red-haired giant, which is another thing that I'm like, why redheaded?
Because it's very fantastical.
It's very weird. White people have red hair.
Well, that too, but I think it's just one of those, so beyond the norm things.
Sure.
At least, unless you're living in Ireland, and it's also plausible too, right? People know people can have red hair.
Sure.
But at the time, there probably aren't very many redheaded, especially, just native redhead people.
Sure. Yeah. Now, the thing is, I've seen people point to this and the story of the redheaded giant of Kandahar and say, see?
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, they got the red hair from the giant of Kandahar, from these stories.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Now, the other thing is what I like to think the most interesting and stupid part of the entire story.
Yeah.
A lot of them had double rows of teeth.
Like sharks.
Or something like that, yeah, And I'm guessing if you pull one out, the other one moves like a Pez dispenser of teeth.
Sounds very handy.
I kind of wish we had that, honestly. I would love to have another row of teeth as a backup. And then, like, 6 fingers.
Okay, common kind of
Polydactyl.
mutation that, can happen.
They just actually, David Tennant just recently had to admit that he has 6 toes on one foot.
Really?
Yeah, no, somebody got a picture of him barefoot and there was an extra toe and he had to explain and he played it off as like, no, it's like a nubbin on my foot.
Interesting.
Yeah, he played it off like it was an extra nipple, but a toe.
Well,
I'm like, that's a fun way to do it. Especially, he was probably highly embarrassed, but...
Well, I can imagine.
Yeah, good for him for playing along with it, but... I get frustrated at this whole thing.
Yeah.
But 6 fingers, okay, that's fine. The multiple rows of teeth, that I can't buy. I just cannot. That's newspaper invention. That is yellow journalism right there.
Yeah.
But all this talk, and I need to say this, I completely forgot my source this week.
Yeah.
Is a book called The Ancient Giants Who Ruled America, The Missing Skeletons and the Great Smithsonian Cover-Up by Richard J. Dewhurst. Now, the book is where I got a lot of this from, including the fingers and the teeth. And all this talk about Native American giants got me to wondering, how common is gigantism in Native Americans? Is it super rare and this is complete bullshit? Or, like, is there more of it? And it turns out, while I don't know specifics, but, like, gigantism is a thing that happens to Native American people.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, the chief of a tribe in Kansas in the 1700s, once white people got here, his name was Chief Black Dog, 7.5 feet tall, 450 pounds.
Yeah.
Mike, this motherfucker forded his own trails that are still being used as highways in Kansas.
Wow.
And Missouri. Like, and the great thing is, they were so fascinated by this giant motherfucker that they drew him. And the thing is, he's got the proportions of someone with gigantism in the drawing. Like, they nailed it. And, like, he's huge. When you think about the average height back then being like 5'5", and there's a 7 foot tall dude.
Yeah.
Goddamn. So, and then there are other Native American leaders that had gigantism, which also led me to thinking, first off, maybe that's what they did with giant people with gigantism back then, the Native Americans. Like, this dude needs to be honored with a mound.
Well, it could be.
And also, I got to thinking about it, Mike. If Andre the Giant walked into our store and said, "I'm not the manager," did you think any of us would have the balls to say no? We would all be like, "Yes, sir. What would you like done first?"
I don't know. Maybe the owner might have something to say about that.
I'm pretty sure he'd show up, look at Andre, and go, "Okay, you're the manager now." But anyway, the point is, it's not uncommon, or at least it's not unheard of. I don't want to say it's not uncommon. That's a little bit of a broad statement.
Yeah, it's not beyond the pale.
Right, exactly. Now, I find this all interesting, and of course, the fact that the Smithsonian is brought up plays into this whole cover-up idea.
Yeah.
And we'll go into that here in a minute. We're going to take a quick break.
Okay.
And when we come back, we're going to talk about that. We're going to bring up the new chronology. And, yeah. So we'll be right back after this. Hey, Kevin here. Hope you're enjoying the episode.
Hey, who are you talking to, Kevin?
Listeners of our shows. I also want to let them know that if they're enjoying what we've been doing, they can support us on Patreon.
Oh, Patreon. Were you going to tell them about the early episodes? Also, Patreon exclusive episodes that can be found there too?
Well, yeah, I was going to do the
Oh, yeah, and then there's the other cool stuff, including art, merch for subscribers, like tote bags, hoodies, shirts, mugs.
Yeah, and
Can you believe people could support us for only $5 a month? You're definitely going to mention that too, right?
I was. Support Supernatural Selection and The Distraction Hole on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. Visit patreon.supernaturalselectionpod.com to learn more and get started today. And we're back. So, before we go on and talk about some of the things I mentioned, Mike directed... Well, first off, Mike, how do you feel about Giants right now?
I think they might be.
But man, let me tell you, I had some trouble coming up with a title without just resorting to they might be Giants.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do it.
Yeah. No, it's too much low hanging fruit.
It is. But you directed me to a documentary about a week ago.
Well, so yeah. So how I came, it's funny how that, so that's from Folding Ideas, a YouTube channel I'm already subscribed to.
Great documentaries.
And so you started telling me about your next episode being about Giants, and then like 2 days later, they Folding Ideas puts out his newest documentary, and it's called Man Tracks. Is that
Man
right?
Tracks, yeah. Which sounds like a porno.
Yeah. And I just like saw it. I was like going, huh, that's weird. What's it about? So I start watching it, and it's about North American religious fundamentalist,
young earthers, basically.
young earth believers that, said they found footprints of men. So the dinosaur footprints in the riverbed?
Yes.
They say they found man prints walking alongside, not only just any man prints, but giant man prints.
Yes, giant man prints.
I'd say like a size like 20 foot or something like that.
And they, in no way do they look carved.
Yeah. And so he goes on talking about, Dan goes on, which is the guy that who does all that. I can't remember his last name.
Yeah.
But yeah, check out Folding Ideas if you like documentary stuff, especially independent stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he did one about Flat Earth.
Yeah, Flat Earth. That was the first one I saw.
Did one about the blockchain. That was great.
That was also great. But he, it's just wild how, it started with one, like Kevin mentioned, the dynamite archaeology phase.
Right.
So there was a period, for archaeology really only gained legitimacy in, say, the last 100 years.
Again, in the last 100 years.
Before that, it was all treasure hunting. And there was this kind of transition period where some of these treasure hunters started to become more legitimized because instead of looking for treasure, they were looking for actual artifacts.
Like, that's how they found Troy.
Yeah. Yeah, treasure hunters obviously were looking for gold, jewelry, things like that. Whereas these early archaeologists, they were looking for, artifacts, but they were not using great conservation methods. They were literally using dynamite to get into some of these, unearth these things.
Right, and these assholes are why there is an international treaty on the recovery of antiquities now.
Yeah. So, and in this transition era, budding, someone who was more archaeology minded than most at the time, came under the I wish I remembered the names of these people. He came under the tutelage of a former dynamite archaeologist and sent him off.
The biggest one of all, man, ran around in a big fur coat.
Yeah. Anyway, and he went out and on his, he was paid to basically drive around the USA follow leads and look for, interesting stuff. And he came across, these sandstone human footprints, and just taking one look at them, he could tell they were carved. He knew they were carved, and he was like, whatever, these aren't really worth my time. But then he found out that where they were found were also found right next to dinosaur where they were quote unquote found were next to dinosaur tracks, which he was more interested in, because when he saw an example of those, you could tell those were real. So, and then that started this whole process of, with all this being discovered, it made national news, and making national news, all these people came out of the woodwork trying to validate the man footprints.
Because it would show the theory of evolution is wrong.
Yeah, because they wanted man to be walking side by side with the dinosaurs, which means dinosaurs were only 4,000 years old or something.
6,000, something like that. But yeah, they also, part of the deal was, and I don't know if don't remember if they mentioned this in the documentary, or I got this from another one. It shows proof that man actually de-evolved from giants.
From giants, yes, he did. He kind of briefly touched on that, but yeah. Man, people used to be giants, but we de-evolved. And that was only one of the guys' theories.
Yeah,
they all didn't believe that.
Yeah, in fact, I believe he's the one that everybody was like, man, you need to, all the other young Earthers were like, dude, you got to shut the fuck up.
But yeah, of course, like being young Earth people, I don't know what else you'd call them. Believers, yeah. They were trying to also, like you said before, push the flood, the Great Flood,
Yep.
And all this stuff.
Yeah, and here's the thing. The idea of us de-evolving from giants, they're not the only ones that believe that. Like, if you've listened to us long enough, you know that I have talked about the fact that humanity started as giant hermaphrodites with like 12-foot tall flying psychic hermaphrodites with 3 eyes, and we de-evolved from that as a punishment from the gods because we fucked dinosaurs.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so that's complete legit. They're right. So,
Kevin,
yes,
does that mean we might be giants?
We were giants.
Oh,
we might be if we stop fucking the dinosaurs.
Damn it. Them sexy triceratops. I tell you, you just can't keep my hands off of them.
I cannot stay away from the stegusi.
I look at an episode of the dinosaur sitcom and it's over.
Man, I tell you, that show Walking with Dinosaurs? Be more than walking. Man. Anyway, that's disgusting. We're awful. So anyway, I also think it's funny that this popped up while I'm doing research on this.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Like I said, there's so many theories about this, but we're going to talk a little bit about, just a second. Let's see. I talked about my theory of leading by height. Again, I'm doing this from a single page of writing. So let's talk about the Smithsonian conspiracy a little bit. This book was really hard to get through.
Yeah.
As they all are, but this one in particular, like, I can get behind a good conspiracy theory and finish a book like the Grand Unified Conspiracy Theory, or like the Saturn Death Cult was like more what the fucks per second than I'm used to, but like it was fascinating. This is enraging. So the idea is
not engorging, is it?
No, God, no. I'm not engorged. Are you turgid?
No.
Because I'm not turgid.
Well, since we left the dinosaurs, I'm not.
Yeah. Oh, fair. Okay. Yeah, we're done with the dinosaurs, so no erections. So the theory is that the Smithsonian has been going and getting giant skeletons and then covering it up and erasing it from the articles, which another thing about these articles in the book before I cover that, the author, again, Richard J. Dewhurst, Mr. Dewhurst cites a lot of articles. In fact, most of the book is copied articles of newspapers from the 1800s up to the 1980s. And the problem, okay, this is a critique of the writing. There's no clear demarcation between his writing and then the article, except for like a headline, and then after the article, it goes back to his writing, and you have to adjust your thinking. Like I have to go back and reread and go, this is him talking now. Like,
yeah.
the whole fucking book, dude. What he'll do is he'll cite these articles, and one of his arguments is, he loves the articles where they talk about, it's a 9-foot skeleton we found. And in the later ones, from like, say, the 30s onward, he says, the height of the skeleton was not mentioned in the article, therefore indicating it was a giant skeleton.
Yeah. If they don't say it's not a giant, therefore it is a giant, right?
Yeah, they didn't say it's not a giant. This is part of the cover-up.
It's, the clear, cover-up by omission.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, perfect. Now, this conspiracy with the Smithsonian, he says that they're hiding it, and his logic behind it is, and I'm trying to gather this, get this straight in my head, because everything he covers talks about how this is the giant white people that built the mounds that were here before the Native Americans.
Yeah.
He says that these laws, or them doing this, is to try to cover up that the Native Americans were giants.
Yeah.
I'm like, nothing you're offering is saying that. Let's see. I wrote something down specifically. Let's see. Claims that the laws return... Yes, okay. I don't know if you remember here a few years ago, there was a really big to-do about displayed Native American skeletons having to be returned to their people.
Yeah.
It's been a big deal.
Yeah.
A pretty big deal. And part of that is this guy's claiming they shouldn't be returned because they're not Native Americans, because they're giants. But then he says the Smithsonian's cover-up is racist because they're saying that there weren't giant Native Americans. And I'm like, which one is it, dude?
Yeah, it's like, it seems like both sidesing it or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, but he also claims that the laws to return native remains to natives is the cover-up for hiding giant white people skeletons.
Wait, so they're both covering up giant native skeletons and giant white people skeletons?
I don't know which one he's going for here.
Yeah, it seems like it's both.
Yeah. I also made a note. There was a guy, Don Dixon. The Dixon Mounds were a series of mounds that were discovered. And this guy exposed these skeletons to the air, built a museum over them, and just let people walk through and look at them for a long time.
Yeah.
And then donated it to the state, and then the Smithsonian got a hold of it and was like, this is wrong. And, like, had the skeletons removed so people couldn't, get their grubby and stop exposing it to the fucking elements.
Yeah.
And that's conspiracy, because they were giants. I've never seen anything in an article saying they were giants, but this guy says they were giants.
Well, if he says they're giants, why would I believe him?
Yeah, exactly. Now, this is a continuing conspiracy. There are many YouTube videos about this.
Of course there are.
And there's really only one other thing I want to talk about giants tonight, Mike.
Yeah.
And that's, we're going to come back to something that we bring up every now and again. I had an update on it on a Weekend Weird a while back, and it's from one of our early classics that you and I did, Mike.
Yeah.
We're going to hop back on the Time Cube episode for a second,
no.
and we're going to talk about the new chronology.
Oh, God.
You remember the new chronology?
Yeah.
The theory that the Russian horde ruled the Earth
Yeah.
in a time before history, and they were wiped out in a mud flood?
Were they giants too?
Yes. Because all these... Their argument is that in all these old photos, everything's shit. It's just mud everywhere with this amazing ancient architecture, like, in detailed churches and great buildings and stuff, but they're surrounded by mud.
Yeah.
And, that means they were discovered, and there's nothing else around them. It's like, that means they were discovered there like that, and we just put a floor in.
Mm-hmm.
And covered up the mud from the flood.
Yeah.
Because we had to do that because the entrances to these buildings, which all have giant ceilings, the entrances were actually like twice as tall because
of course
the Russian horde were all giants.
Well, why wouldn't they be?
Tartaria. The Tartarian Empire.
Did they have a cream?
I
think they might have had a cream.
A sauce, maybe. A Tartaria sauce.
Well, they had cream of tartar as well.
Yes, the cream of Tartaria. But this is, of course, the please love me Big Daddy Putin theory we talked about.
Yeah.
That says apparently that the Russians were all giants. This is one of those really nationalistic theories.
Yeah.
And I hate it, but we got to bring it up because it's giant related. And it's saying that, of course, giants predated natives and white people, but they were Russian. I guess technically, if they were from like the Caucasus Mountains in that area, wouldn't that mean they were in fact Caucasian?
Yeah.
Okay. And Caucasians are not actually white. The people of the Caucasus Mountains are not like pasty people like us, right?
Okay, they're not?
I don't think so.
Then why are we Caucasian?
I think it's a misnomer. But, yeah. So, Mike, tell me some thoughts. Tell me how the conspiracy makes you feel. Like, really.
Feels like a lot of conspiracies kind of dumb.
Yeah?
Like, it's a lot of grasping at straws, a lot of misconstruing, evidence.
Yeah.
A lot of, like, putting your own suppositions and pre-existing, notions up to the things you find. It's bad.
Yeah.
It's bad or not even science.
And the thing is, the book really makes a big deal about, all these articles can't be wrong. And the thing is, this guy obviously doesn't know about yellow journalism. He doesn't understand that these articles were not meant to be real.
Yeah.
It's like if in 200 years, someone found a copy of the Weekly World News from the 80s.
Yeah.
And was like, obviously the president met an alien and there was a bat boy. Why would they print it otherwise?
And Bigfoot was going around just impregnating everybody.
Okay, we don't have proof that's not happening.
Well, I mean...
Like, if David were here, he'd back me up on this.
There's not a whole lot of very large hirsute children running around.
Yeah, that's because maybe we're not compatible for that, but that doesn't mean there's not sweet loving.
And then it also brings up, there's the obvious answer. Those giant footprints were really just Bigfoot.
Actually, that I would buy that more than I would buy any of these theories.
And you know what that means? Not that Bigfoot was around when the dinosaurs were there, but Bigfoot is a time traveler.
Or did Bigfoot go and carve those?
No, he's a time traveler.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I just thought it'd be funny if he went around with like a chisel and a hammer and was like, me leave mark.
No, he goes back
Time
in time
traveler.
and visits the dinosaurs.
Dude, according to Dark Matter Monsters, that is completely a legit theory.
Of course it is, because I said it. No.
One of these days, we're gonna do an episode about shit we just can't really do a whole episode about.
Yeah.
because I got to talk about dark matter monsters. I read that book thinking we're going to do an episode about this. I was like, I can summarize this in like 4 sentences, and then we'd just spend 10 minutes talking about it, and then we'd have to stop recording. So we're going to have to do one of those episodes. Hell, I'm shocked we had enough of this for an hour at least. So, yeah, it's really annoying because the level of trust this guy is putting in newspaper articles from the 1800s that alternately would talk about the Batman on the moon, which maybe he believes that too.
I mean, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, this is also where, like, the report of the flying humanoid heading over toward New Jersey with a cruel expression on his face and improved frog's legs. Like, that's where that came from, is this kind of journalism. Like, it's a great description, but it's a bullshit newspaper article.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. And as a researcher, again, I'm not a paranormal investigator. I am a professional amateur, and I am a paranormal researcher. Yes, I'm not.
Have you confused yourself about what
I think I did. I'm not a paranormal investigator. I'm a researcher.
You're a paranormal enthusiast.
Yes. Yes, I am. And the giants, and I didn't even get into the obvious fakes. There's like the Minnesota Iceman. I highly recommend you read that up. There was this frozen giant discovered in Minnesota that like was a fossilized man. Like he even had a ding dong. And of course, when they fucking did a scan on it, it's just a carved chunk of rock. And people were paying 2 bits a gander for it. I want to say like Ripley's bought it.
Of course.
You know? So it's just one of those things where like every now and again somebody will do that. The Cardiff Giant is a great example. There's always these fossilized giants that are just carved statues turning up. And those are kind of fun because that's a huckster making a buck. It's like, I tell you what, man, I found me this giant. And I will sell you these remains for $50.
Yeah.
Well, you say you give me $50, you could take old Gargantua here and tour him around the country, charge 2 bits a gander. Which I would love to have been a huckster back in the 18 and 1900s, man.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, maybe not snake oil, but like we could have done a giant hoax.
I think you have to be in good with like a good taxidermist.
Well, I'm talking about no, that's why they're petrified. It's always, because that's the thing, the petrified giants were playing into this whole mound building.
I'm just saying, being a huckster in general, you have to have you have to have a sculptor and a taxidermist on call, for you, and you have a good idea. It's like, I need a jackalope, but he has a snake for a tail.
What you do is you do it. You get a taxidermist to make you something. You kill the taxidermist, and then you sell it to P.T. Barnum.
You don't have to kill the taxidermist because,
you don't want him talking.
Well, but who's he going to talk to? It's not like they have fucking Twitter. Like, he's going to tell 3 people that he knows. And, meanwhile, this thing's going to be touring the fucking country.
We'd be dead by the time anybody actually found out. It'd be one of those stories we're talking to, like, the 90-year-old son of the guy.
Yeah.
My daddy told me that he made that there mermaid. I'm doing the same voice a lot tonight because my voice is a little raspy, and that's the one voice I can do right now.
Well, it's also the yokel voice. So,
Yeah, it's almost Phantoms and Monsters voice. Everybody on the bingo card, that was a nice clink. So,
hey, now.
You're an all-star?
No ice shaming.
I'm not shaming. I'm just telling everybody with a bingo card, get your marker out.
Well, Kevin did a voice, so that's a marker, too.
Yeah, it is. So, Anyway, that's kind of the episode, and I apologize to everyone if it's a little shambolic, but like
And short, but hey, short's better than nothing, right?
yeah, we needed to get something out because it's been a while. David's out. I didn't have a chance to write a script, but I've got all this information rolling around in my head, and I figured let's just have a good old-fashioned discussion, just you and me talking about something dumb.
And Kevin had to get the demons out, otherwise it'd make him go insane.
That is the whole reason I'm doing this show.
Now he could just like let all that information just go and fly out of his head.
And you know what?
And he could be sane for about a week.
And you know what? For my next episode, I may just grab one of my copies of Unexplained and pick a topic.
Yeah.
And just do that. I don't know. It's been a while since I did that, Just going through, Tatzelworm. But anyway, that's it for this week.
Yes.
We're done.
Ooh.
So, yeah, we can. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm tired and losing my mind. So
We're done.
Yeah,
The
we're
show's
done.
So, end of shows things we do.
Yes. So I want to thank everyone for listening. Mike, have you got anything you want to plug real quick?
Go watch Folding Ideas. Dan, last name I'm forgetting.
I'm gonna find out for you.
He does several good. Has quite a few. If you're looking for some short documentaries, like they're getting longer, but the early
the
ones
latest
were like
one's
under
like
an
an hour and a half.
Yeah, but they're
Dan Olson.
That's right.
From Alberta.
Yeah, Canadian dude.
Man, and you know what? He did a really good one about the angry video game nerd.
Oh yeah,
I highly recommend that.
It was a very surreal one because he made a miniature of the angry video game nerd shooting sets, and it was almost too much, but it was fun. He also did a really good one about how it's rude to be bad at World of Warcraft.
He also did one about the Nostalgia Critics video about the wall. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I need to watch the one about Ralph Bakshi and the Lord of the Rings,
I'm trying to remember I'm sure I've seen that one, but it does not ring a bell.
Yeah. First one I saw was In Search of a Flat Earth, and that was great.
Yes. That was a really good one.
Yeah. I really enjoy watching his beard length fluctuate.
Yes.
Because, he looked like an insane mountain person in the James Rolfe one, and they looked human again in Man Tracks.
Well, I'm sure he let the beard grow out just so it would look more. I think it fed into kind of the insanity look he was going for with that.
Yeah.
One. It was very red yarn and pictures on a cork board aesthetic for that.
Now I see
episode.
he's got one about the Mickelson twins.
Yes,
and in the thumbnail, he's got mirror shades on, and it looks like Warren.
Well, I always thought he looked like Warren.
He does a bit. There's a bit of Warren going on. That's kind of freaky. So thank you, everyone, for listening. I hope you enjoyed this. We'll be back next week with a Weekend Weird, and we should have a special guest, and I'm not going to say anything else about it. On the odd chance that doesn't work out. The last several times we've tried to have a guest, things have fallen the fuck apart. And part of that is because we have to record so late. So, again, thank you for listening. If you would like to learn more about the show, you can head to supernatpod.rocks. That is supernatpod.rocks. You will find a link to our Discord, our Patreon, our merch store, and every episode of the podcasts on there. That includes Supernat, Weekend Weird, and The Distraction Hall, which should be coming back hopefully this weekend if David is alive. So, we will see you guys next week. Thank you once more for listening.
Thank you very much.
So we will see you next time. And until then, stay safe and stay frosty.
Or toasty.
Goodbye. Toasty!
Well, some people want to be warm and not frosty.
That's true. I guess. You weirdos. I don't know. You know me. I'm cold all the time now.
Well, we're in the South, so it would make sense we want to kind of stay cool.
Yeah, I want to stay in. I want to live in a mall.
68 degrees year round.
68 degrees. Decent music playing every now and again. There's a Gadzooks on the first floor.
You get like a place to sit down every 100 feet.
Oh, that's it. I want to live in a Journeys.
Food court.
Oh yeah, man, I miss the food court.